Lieutenant Commander Ethan Walsh stood at attention as the alien delegation entered the conference room of the UES Discovery. This was humanity's first official diplomatic meeting with the Zorian Alliance, and everyone felt the weight of the moment. Captain Susan Morgan stepped forward with a practiced smile, her hand extended in the universal gesture of peace. Ambassador Zektal, welcome aboard the Discovery. We are honored by your presence, she said. The tall, blue-skinned alien did not take her hand but inclined his elongated head. His 4 eyes blinked in an unsettling pattern. The honor is mutual, Captain Morgan. The Zorian Alliance looks forward to productive exchanges with your species. Behind the ambassador stood Science Overseer Vrillax, a slender Zorian with intricate patterns etched into his skin, denoting his high scientific rank. His gaze swept the room with obvious curiosity. The human crew had spent weeks preparing for this meeting. The conference room displayed Earth artifacts, scientific achievements, and cultural items carefully selected to represent humanity. Captain Morgan led the aliens on a tour of the displays, explaining each with diplomatic precision. And this, she said, stopping at a table near the back, is Lieutenant Commander Walsh's station. He oversees survival training and emergency preparedness for all our exploration teams. Walsh stepped forward. A pleasure to meet you, Ambassador. Overseer Vrillax. The ambassador's translator device hummed softly. Survival specialist? An unusual designation. Every human ship carries at least one, Walsh explained. We place high priority on being prepared for unexpected situations. Ambassador Zektal exchanged a quick glance with Vrillax. Indeed. Perhaps you could elaborate on your preparations. Walsh brightened. This was his area of expertise. He gestured to the display table where he had arranged standard-issue survival gear. Every human who sets foot on an unexplored planet carries these essentials, Walsh began, picking up a compact bundle. This is our basic survival kit. He unrolled the package to reveal neatly organized tools, each in its own pocket. Water, purification tablets, fire starter, multi-tool, emergency rations, signal mirror, basic medical supplies, thermal blanket, water collection system. Vrillax leaned forward, 4-fingered hands clasped behind his back. These are mechanical devices. No power source? Most require no power, Walsh confirmed. That's the point. When technology fails, these keep you alive. A strange sound emerged from the ambassador. The humans realized after a moment that he was laughing. Forgive me, Zektal said, composing himself. On our worlds, technology does not fail. Walsh kept his expression neutral. With respect, Ambassador, even the most advanced systems can be disrupted. Solar flares, electromagnetic pulses, extreme environmental conditions. Our technology accounts for such variables. Vrillax interrupted. He picked up the fire starter, a simple ferrocerium rod with a striker. This creates fire through friction? How prehistoric. Captain Morgan noticed Walsh's jaw tightening. Different approaches reflect different evolutionary histories, she said diplomatically. Humans evolved on a planet with unpredictable conditions. As did we all, Zektal remarked, but his tone suggested otherwise. The Zorian homeworld experienced stable patterns for millions of years. We learned to control our environment rather than prepare for its failure. Walsh carefully returned the fire starter to its place. These tools have saved countless lives on exploration missions. Vrillax picked up the water purification tablets, reading the package with his translator. Primitive chemical filtration. Our bodysuits recycle all fluids and neutralize toxins automatically. And if your bodysuit malfunctions? Walsh asked. The science overseer's eyes blinked in sequence, the Zorian equivalent of an eye roll. It doesn't. The meeting continued with increasing tension. The humans demonstrated their approach to exploration, thorough preparation for worst-case scenarios. The Zorians showcased their advanced technology, seamless, elegant solutions that required no manual intervention. During a break in the formal proceedings, Walsh stood by the window, looking out at the stars. Vrillax approached, studying the Human with unconcealed curiosity. Your species carries these survival tools even now when you travel between stars? The alien asked. Walsh nodded. Old habits die hard. We find comfort in being prepared. A curious form of comfort, Vrillax said. To constantly anticipate disaster. We call it insurance, Walsh replied. We hope never to need it, but we sleep better knowing it's there. The alien scientist traced a pattern on his wrist device, bringing up holographic data. Our analysis suggests that human cognitive patterns include an unusual fixation on low-probability events. You expend significant resources preparing for scenarios unlikely to occur. Walsh smiled thinly. Perhaps our definitions of unlikely differ. Across the room, Captain Morgan was having a similar conversation with Ambassador Zektal. Your survival specialist seems passionate about his primitive tools, the ambassador observed. Morgan kept her voice level. Commander Walsh has personally survived 3 catastrophic mission failures using those primitive tools. 57 crew members owe him their lives. Fascinating, the ambassador said, though his tone suggested the opposite. That such failures occur frequently enough to justify his position. Before Morgan could respond, Zektal continued. Perhaps we could demonstrate a more advanced approach. My science team has identified a promising planet for joint exploration, designated PX-4872, similar to Earth in many respects, but untouched. We would welcome your participation in a survey mission. Morgan recognized the challenge beneath the polite invitation. We would be honored to join you. Excellent. The ambassador's mouth formed what might have been a smile. A practical demonstration will be more convincing than any debate. Your team may bring its survival kit if it provides psychological comfort. Later, after the Zorians had returned to their ship, Morgan called Walsh to her office. They're testing us, she said without preamble. Walsh nodded. They think we're paranoid primitives. Their technology is generations ahead of ours, Morgan said. But their attitude concerns me. That level of certainty is dangerous in space exploration. What are your orders, Captain? Morgan looked out the viewport at the sleek Zorian vessel. Prepare a team for the joint mission. Pack every piece of survival gear we can justify, and then some. Walsh allowed himself a small smile. Yes, Captain. And Walsh? Make sure everyone has their analog backups. I have a feeling we might need them. Walsh nodded, already mentally preparing his list. The Zorians' mockery stung, but it wasn't the first time humans had been underestimated. Something told him it wouldn't be the last either. In his quarters that night, Walsh carefully inspected his personal survival kit, the same model he'd carried for 15 years. The worn leather case had been with him through situations the Zorians couldn't imagine. He ran his fingers over the simple tools inside. They'll understand soon enough, he murmured to himself as he packed for the mission ahead. The landing shuttles descended through the atmosphere of planet PX-4872, breaking through cloud cover to reveal a landscape of rolling hills and dense forests. The human shuttle was sturdy and functional, while the Zorian vessel gleamed like liquid metal in the alien sunlight. Dr. Olivia Martinez pressed her face to the viewport, her eyes wide with wonder. As the team's xenobiologist, she had been studying the preliminary scans for days, but nothing compared to seeing an alien world with her own eyes. Beautiful, she whispered. Beside her, Chief Petty Officer Kyle Daniels checked his gear one final time. The security specialist had served on 5 first-contact missions, and his experience told him that beautiful planets often held hidden dangers. Remember the briefing, he said quietly to the science team. Stay within visual range of a buddy at all times. Lieutenant Commander Walsh nodded approval from his seat. Captain Morgan had remained aboard the Discovery, but her final orders had been clear: maintain protocol regardless of Azorian attitudes. The shuttles landed in a clearing half a kilometer apart. Walsh led his team out onto the surface of PX-4872, breathing deeply as his boots touched alien soil. The air was surprisingly Earth-like, rich with organic scents. 20 minutes later, the human and Zorian teams converged at the predetermined meeting point. Science Director Morelkos, the Zorian expedition leader, greeted them with the formal hand gesture of his species. "Welcome to PX 4872, he said, as if the planet were already Zorian territory. "Our preliminary scans show no dangerous life forms or weather patterns. You may relax your precautions." Walsh noticed that the Zorians carried almost nothing. Their environmental suits seemed to be their only equipment. "We'll follow our standard protocols," Walsh replied evenly. "Better safe than sorry." Morelkos made that strange laughing sound that humans were beginning to recognize. "As you wish." A younger Zorian stepped forward, eyes blinking with excitement. "I am Junior Scientist Ixil. I have studied your species and would be honored to work alongside your scientists." Dr. Martinez smiled warmly. "I'd like that very much. Perhaps we could share observations?" Ixil bobbed his head in agreement, and Morelkos gave a gesture of permission, though his posture suggested mild disapproval of the young scientist's enthusiasm. The teams began their survey work. The Zorians deployed floating drones that zipped through the air, scanning and cataloging plant species with impressive speed. Their wrist devices projected detailed holographic models of the surrounding terrain, complete with geological data, to a depth of 50 meters. The humans worked more slowly, taking physical samples and making notes on ruggedized tablets. Dr. Martinez collected specimens in sealed containers, while Daniels maintained a watchful perimeter. "Your methods are inefficient," Morelkos observed, watching Martinez label a plant sample. "Our drones have already cataloged 93 plant species in this area alone." Martinez looked up from her work. "Physical samples allow for tests that remote scanning can't perform. Different approaches, Director Morelkos. Redundant approaches," he corrected. "Our scanners detect chemical composition, DNA structure, cellular activity, and potential toxins." Junior Scientist Ixil moved between the groups, clearly fascinated by the humans' hands-on techniques. When Walsh showed him how to use a simple magnifying glass to examine leaf structures, the young Zorian seemed genuinely impressed. "Our technology allows us to see at the molecular level," Ixil said, "but there is something immediate about your method." By midday, the teams had established a joint base camp near an unusual rock formation. The humans set up traditional weatherproof tents, while the Zorians activated a single device that generated a shimmering force field dome. "Your dwelling will protect you from rain," Morelkos noted, watching the humans hammer stakes into the ground. "Ours adjusts to all environmental conditions automatically and requires no physical labor." Walsh wiped sweat from his brow. "Your setup is impressive, but we like to work with our hands." As the first day of exploration drew to a close, Walsh found himself standing next to Dr. Martinez at the edge of camp. The alien sunset painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. "Notice anything about this planet?" Walsh asked quietly. Martinez nodded slowly. "It's too perfect. No dangerous animals, ideal temperature, breathable atmosphere. Not even any insects annoying us." "Exactly. In 15 years of planetary exploration, I've never seen a world this accommodating." "The Zorians don't seem concerned." Walsh glanced toward the alien dome where Science Director Morelkos was reviewing data with his team. "They trust their technology completely. That's what worries me." Inside the Zorian shelter, Junior Scientist Ixil was asking questions that irritated his superior. "Director, why do the humans carry so much equipment? Is there something their scans detected that ours missed?" Morelkos displayed his annoyance through a quick pattern of eye blinks. "Their species evolved in a state of constant warfare, with nature, with each other. They cannot comprehend true security." "Their thoroughness is impressive," Ixil ventured. "Their paranoia is wasteful," Morelkos corrected. "When this mission concludes successfully with no emergencies, perhaps they will finally recognize the superiority of our approach." The second day brought more of the same, detailed exploration with the Zorians constantly demonstrating their technological edge while the humans maintained their methodical approach. Walsh noted with interest that young Ixil spent more time near Dr. Martinez, asking questions about Earth and human culture. By the third day, the teams had settled into a rhythm, The initial tension had eased somewhat, though Science Director Mrelka still made occasional comments about human inefficiency. Walsh kept these interactions cordial, but found himself watching the sky with growing concern. That evening, as the teams gathered for their daily data exchange, Walsh stepped outside the human tent and studied the horizon. The clouds had taken on a strange greenish tint that hadn't been present before. The wind had shifted, carrying new scents, metallic and sharp. "Something wrong, Commander?" Chief Daniels asked, coming to stand beside him. "Barometric pressures dropping," Walsh said. "And look at those cloud formations." Daniels frowned. "Storm coming? Maybe. Run a quick check on our gear. Make sure everything's secured." When Walsh mentioned his concerns to Morelkos, the Zorian dismissed them immediately. "Our atmospheric sensors detect no significant changes," he said. "Minor pressure variations are normal on any planet." "On Earth, these signs often precede severe weather," Walsh explained. Science Director Morelkos made a gesture that translated roughly as condescending reassurance. "PX-4872 is not Earth, Commander. Our monitoring systems are calibrated to 16 different planetary atmosphere types. If danger existed, we would know." Walsh nodded politely but issued quiet orders to his team anyway. That night, as the others slept, he repacked essential supplies into smaller emergency kits, one for each human team member. Just before dawn, the first rumble of thunder rolled across the valley. Walsh was already awake, counting the seconds, between lightning flashes and thunder. Whatever was coming, it was moving fast. The storm broke with sudden violence. Lightning tore across the sky in strange horizontal patterns, flashing green and blue instead of white. Walsh was already moving through the human camp, waking his team. "Full storm protocol," he ordered as wind began to whip through the camp. "Secure all equipment." Dr. Martinez zipped her jacket and quickly packed her specimen cases. "These readings are off the charts. The electromagnetic activity is like nothing I've seen before." Outside, the Zorian dome glowed brightly as its systems responded to the changing conditions. Science Director Morelkos stood at its entrance, watching the humans scramble with obvious amusement. "Your concern is unnecessary," he called over the rising wind. "Our shelter can withstand forces 10 times stronger than this minor weather event." As if in answer, a massive lightning bolt struck the ground between the camps. The earth shook. For 3 seconds, everything electronic in both camps went dead. Then, just as suddenly, the Zorian systems flickered back to life. Morelkos looked, momentarily unsettled but quickly regained his composure. "A power surge," he explained. "Our systems are already compensating." Walsh wasn't listening. He was counting seconds between lightning strikes. The storm was directly overhead now, and something about it felt wrong. The hair on his arm stood up, not just from static electricity but from years of experience sensing danger. "Everyone inside," he ordered his team. "Chief Daniels, break out the Faraday bags." The security officer nodded and distributed metallic pouches to each team member. "Essential electronics only. Communicators, emergency beacons, medical scanners." "Is that primitive shielding?" Junior Scientist Ixil asked, approaching the human camp with curiosity. The young Zorian had grown increasingly fascinated by human methods. "Our systems have built-in surge protection." Before Dr. Martinez could answer, the sky turned an impossible shade of purple. A sound like tearing metal filled the air. Lightning struck again, not just once, but in a continuous barrage that lit up the entire valley. This time, the electronics didn't come back on. Inside the Zorian dome, alarms blared for 3 seconds before falling silent. The shimmering force field flickered and dissolved. Morelkos stared at his dead wrist device in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. Around him, the Zorian team tapped frantically at dark screens. Their suits, which regulated everything from temperature to oxygen levels, were failing. Walsh saw the panic beginning to spread among the aliens. "Morelkos, get your people to our camp now." For once, the Zorian director didn't argue. He shouted orders in his native language, and the alien team rushed toward the human tents. All except for Ixil, the junior scientist, was nowhere to be seen. He went to collect samples by the eastern ridge, a female Zorian scientist explained, her translator device sputtering with static before going silent completely. A massive crack of thunder split the air, followed by an ominous rumbling from beyond the trees. Flash flood, Daniel said, pointing to the water already rushing around their ankles. And that's not all, Dr. Martinez added grimly. She pointed to the forest where the first trees were beginning to smoke. Lightning had started fires that were spreading quickly in the rising wind. Walsh made a split-second decision. We need to evacuate to higher ground. Now. The combined teams grabbed what they could carry. The Zorians looked lost, clutching dead devices and staring helplessly at equipment that had suddenly become useless. What about Ixil? Dr. Martinez asked, her voice barely audible over the storm. Science Director Morelkos's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in distress. We cannot help him without functioning trackers. The logical choice is to ensure the survival of those present. That's not how we operate, Walsh said firmly. He turned to his team. Martinez, you saw where he was collecting samples. Can you find him? The xenobiologist nodded. I think so. The eastern ridge has distinctive red-barked trees. It's too dangerous, Morelkos protested. Your primitive equipment cannot... Our primitive equipment still works, Walsh interrupted, pulling a waterproof compass from his pocket. Electronics are down, but this doesn't need power. He quickly organized the evacuation. Daniels, get everyone to higher ground. Use the ridge to the north. Martinez and I will find Ixil and catch up. The security chief nodded grimly. You've got 4 hours before dark. After that, we light signal fires. Walsh handed out emergency kits to each Zorian. Water purification tablets, emergency rations, thermal blanket, basic first aid, signal, whistle. The aliens took the unfamiliar items with shaking hands. Ambassador Zektal, who had been quietly observing until now, held the small kit with something like reverence. These are the items we mocked, he said softly. Save the apologies for when we're all safe, Walsh replied, checking his own pack. For now, follow Chief Daniels' instructions exactly. As the main group headed north, Walsh and Martinez struck out eastward, fighting against wind and increasingly heavy rain. The compass and an old-fashioned paper map kept them oriented when everything around them looked different in the stormlight. The fires are spreading faster than I expected, Martinez shouted over the wind. She pointed to where black smoke was beginning to rise from multiple spots in the forest. Walsh nodded grimly. The lightning must have high mineral content. It's superheating the trees on impact. They pushed forward, using handkerchiefs soaked in water to filter the increasingly smoky air. When they reached the eastern ridge, visibility was down to less than 20 meters. Ixil, Martinez called, her voice barely carrying through the storm. Ixil. A faint sound answered them. Not a voice, but the distinctive 3-note whistle of a Zorian distress call. They followed the sound to a rocky outcropping where they found the junior scientist trapped under a fallen tree branch, his leg bent at an unnatural angle. The storm came so suddenly, Ixil gasped, his translator flickering with the last of its power. My equipment failed, all of it. Walsh knelt beside the injured alien. We're going to get you out of here. Dr. Martinez, medical kit. As Martinez prepared a field splint, Walsh worked to free Ixil from the fallen branch. The young Zorian watched in fascination despite his pain. You brought medical supplies manually, he observed, not in your devices. Backup systems, Walsh explained, lifting the branch enough for Martinez to pull Ixil free. Always have backups for your backups. A massive thunderclap shook the ground. Beneath them, through a break in the trees, they saw an impossible sight, a wall of fire rushing up the valley driven by storm winds. What had been scattered fires was now joining into a single inferno. We can't go back the way we came, Martinez said, her face pale in the eerie light. Walsh helped Ixil to his feet, supporting the alien's weight. There's a cave system marked on the map about half a kilometer north. If we can reach it before the fire does, I will slow you down, Ixil said. The logical choice is to stick together, Walsh finished firmly. Human logic includes not leaving anyone behind. With Martinez on one side and Walsh on the other, They began the painful journey toward potential safety, race, and species forgotten in the simple struggle to survive. The cave entrance was barely visible through the smoke and rain. Walsh, Martinez, and the injured Ixil fought their way forward as the wall of fire roared behind them. Each step was a battle against wind, mud, and the aliens' increasing weakness. Just a little further, Walsh encouraged, though his own lungs burned with effort. They stumbled into the cave opening just as a blast of superheated air swept past them. Martinez helped Ixil sink to the ground while Walsh quickly assessed their shelter. The cave extended deep into the ridge, providing good protection from the fire, but a steady trickle of water down one wall warned of potential flooding. "We need to move further in," Walsh decided, "but not too deep in case we need to evacuate." Ixil watched through pain-glazed eyes as Martinez unpacked her medical kit. "Our medical systems would have repaired this injury in minutes," he said wistfully. Martinez smiled as she examined his broken leg. "Well, we'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. It will hurt, but you'll heal." While Martinez set Ixil's leg using supplies from her kit, Walsh explored a short distance into the cave. He returned with good news. "There's a higher chamber, about 50 meters in. Dry ground, multiple exits. It's our best option until the fire passes." Moving Ixil caused the young alien visible pain, but he bore it without complaint. Once they were settled in the higher chamber, Walsh broke out emergency light sticks, casting the cave in a soft green glow. "No batteries needed," he explained, when Ixil examined the light with curiosity. "Chemical reaction. Lasts about 12 hours. Outside, the storm raged on. Occasional tremors shook the cave as lightning struck nearby." Walsh checked his watch. An old-style mechanical timepiece that still worked perfectly. "The others should have reached the North Ridge by now," he said. "Once the storm passes, we'll find them." "If they reached it," Ixil said quietly. "My people are not prepared for this. Our training assumes functioning technology." Martinez finished securing a splint on Ixil's leg. "Humans have been surviving disasters since before we had technology. Your people are smart. They'll adapt." Walsh nodded in agreement, though privately he shared Ixil's concern. The Zorians' panic when their systems failed had been alarming. If they hadn't listened to Daniel's instructions, he pushed the thought aside and focused on their immediate needs. "We should rest while we can. The storm might last hours." Ixil looked at the small survival kit Walsh had given him. "May I ask how these items work? Without my analysis systems, I cannot determine their function." Walsh spent the next hour explaining each item to the curious alien. The simple water purification tablets especially fascinated Ixil. "So basic chemistry creates safe water? No filtration system? No power source?" "Sometimes simpler is better," Walsh replied. "Less to break." Meanwhile, Daniels led the main group up the North Ridge through increasingly difficult conditions. The Zorians struggled with the physical exertion. Their bodies adapted to a world with lighter gravity. Without their technology assisting them, every step was exhausting. Ambassador Zektal stumbled on the wet rocks, and Daniels caught him before he could fall. "Thank you," the ambassador said, his breathing labored. "We are not accustomed to such conditions." "Focus on placing your feet where I place mine," Daniels advised, "and use this." He handed the ambassador a sturdy walking stick he had cut from a fallen branch. Science Director Morelkos watched this exchange with a strange expression. His entire worldview was crumbling around him. The sophisticated technology that had defined Zorian superiority now hung useless on his body. Instead, he found himself dependent on a human using tools no more advanced than those used by early ancestors. When they finally reached a protected area beneath an overhanging cliff, Daniels organized the group with quiet efficiency. He assigned tasks: gathering dry wood from protected areas, setting up simple shelters using the thermal blankets from their kits, collecting rainwater. The Zorians followed his instructions with growing respect. When Morelkos attempted to drink directly from a puddle, Daniel stopped him. "Use the tablets first," he said, demonstrating how to purify the water. "Unknown planets often harbor microorganisms our bodies can't handle." As night fell, Daniels got a small fire going despite the damp conditions. The Zorians gathered around it, drawn to its warmth and light like moths. For beings used to climate-controlled environments, the natural heat source seemed almost magical in its simplicity. Back in the cave, Walsh kept watch while Martinez and Ixil slept. The storm was beginning to weaken, but the danger wasn't over. Flash floods had begun carrying debris past the cave entrance, and the air outside remained thick with smoke. Near midnight, Martinez woke and joined Walsh at the cave opening. "How's our patient?" Walsh asked quietly. "Stable. Their physiology is different, but the basics of first aid still apply. The splint is holding." Walsh nodded, his eyes on the chaos outside. "Something's happening to the planet's weather patterns. This isn't a normal storm. It's like the entire ecosystem is destabilizing." Martinez frowned. "The preliminary surveys showed a stable environment." "Preliminary surveys miss things. Always." They sat in silence for a moment, watching lightning dance across the distant hills. Then Martinez spoke hesitantly. "Walsh, I need to tell you something. While collecting samples yesterday, I noticed unusual crystalline structures in the soil. They seemed to be growing. I meant to analyze them, but then the storm hit." Walsh turned to her. "Growing crystals? Where?" "Throughout the valley floor. They weren't in the initial survey. I think they're responding to electrical activity, expanding and possibly multiplying." Walsh processed this information. "So the lightning isn't just causing fires. It's potentially triggering some kind of chain reaction in these crystals." Dawn approached. The storm finally began to subside. The constant lightning decreased to occasional flashes. The rain slowed to a drizzle. But the world it revealed was dramatically changed. The valley below was transformed. What had been a lush landscape was now scorched in some places, flooded in others. Strange crystalline formations glinted in the early light, growing where nothing had been before. More worrying was the new behavior of the local plants. What had seemed like harmless vegetation was now visibly moving, releasing clouds of spores into the air. "We need to move," Walsh decided, watching a nearby patch of blue flowers turn and orient toward them like sunflowers tracking light. Those plants weren't doing that before. Martinez checked Ixil's splint one more time. "He can travel, but slowly. Slow is better than not at all." Walsh helped the alien to his feet. "We need to find the others and get off this ridge before those spores reach us." Ixil looked out at the transformed landscape. "Our survey indicated no mobile plant life, no crystalline formations, no atmospheric toxins." "Surveys can be wrong," Walsh said simply. "That's why we prepare for the unexpected." As they made their way carefully down a path Walsh selected, Ixil watched the humans' methodical approach with new understanding. "You expected this?" the young alien said. "Not this exact scenario, but something going wrong." Walsh helped him, over a fallen log. "I wouldn't say expected, but I always considered it possible. That's the difference in our approaches." Behind them, the blue flowers released another cloud of spores, which drifted slowly in their direction on the morning breeze. 7 days after the storm began, rescue shuttles finally broke through the electromagnetic disturbance surrounding PX 4872. What they found was not what they expected. The combined human and Zorian teams had established a secure camp on high ground near a freshwater spring. Simple shelters made of fallen tree branches and thermal blankets formed a protective circle. A fire burned steadily in the center, with carefully arranged stones containing the flames. Captain Susan Morgan stepped off the first shuttle and surveyed the scene with relief and pride. All members of both teams were present and alive. The humans looked tired but competent. The Zorians appeared changed, their usually immaculate appearance now rough and weathered, but there was new strength in their posture. "Captain," Walsh greeted her with a salute. Despite 7 days in the wilderness, he still maintained military bearing. "Welcome to Camp Survival." "Report, Commander," Morgan said, hiding her smile. "All personnel accounted for. Minor injuries only. We've successfully maintained shelter, clean water, and food supplies." He glanced at the Zorians. "Both teams." Ambassador Zektal approached, his once pristine robes now stained and torn. At his side walked Science Director Morelkos, who carried a hand-carved walking stick. "Captain Morgan," the ambassador said formally, "we owe your crew our lives." Morgan raised an eyebrow. "I look forward to a full report." As the rescue teams helped pack up the camp, Ambassador Zektal joined Morgan and Walsh for a private conversation. "Our ships detected the electromagnetic anomaly 3 days ago," Morgan explained, "but we couldn't penetrate it until now." "The storm triggered something in the planet's crust," Walsh said. "Dr. Martinez believes native crystals reacted to the electrical activity, creating a field that disrupted all technology." "And nearly killed us all," Zektal added quietly. "Had your people not been prepared?" The ambassador gazed across the camp where junior scientist Ixil sat with Dr. Martinez. The young Zorian's splinted leg was propped carefully on a smooth rock. Despite his injury, he was eagerly explaining something to the human scientist. Hands moving animatedly. "Ixil has proposed a joint research paper," Walsh told Morgan. "He believes the combination of our survival knowledge and Zorian technology could revolutionize exploration protocols." "And what does Director Morelkos think of that?" Morgan asked. Zektal made the Zorian gesture indicating deep respect. "Morelkos has undergone what your people might call a conversion. He spent the week learning every survival technique your Chief Daniels would teach him." Across the camp, Morelkos was demonstrating to a group of Zorians how to use a fire striker. His 4 eyes focused intently on the task, no trace of mockery in his manner. "What changed him?" Morgan wondered. "The blue flowers," Walsh said grimly. "When they released their spores, our simple cloth masks filtered them out. The Zorians had nothing." Morelkos inhaled a full dose. "The spores caused pain like nothing I have experienced," Zektal explained. "Without Dr. Martinez's medical kit, Morelkos would have died in agony. She used only simple tools and plants she identified as having antihistamine properties. She saved his life with sticks and leaves," Walsh added. "That's when everything changed." As the sun set on their final day on PX 4872, the combined teams gathered for a simple meal before departure. The mood was quietly celebratory, the relief of survivors who had faced death together and emerged stronger. Science Director Morelkos stood, using his walking stick for support. The normally formal Zorian looked around the circle, making eye contact with each person. "Before we leave this world, I wish to speak," he said. His translator had been repaired, but he chose to leave it off, speaking carefully in basic English he had learned over the week. "I came to this planet believing Zorian ways superior. I was wrong." A murmur ran through the group. For a Zorian leader to admit error was unprecedented. "Among my people, technology solves all problems. We forgot what comes before technology." He tapped his head. "Knowledge, wisdom," then he tapped his chest. "Courage, adaptability." He gestured to the humans. "You keep these things alive. Even with your advanced ships and weapons, you remember how to survive with nothing." Chief Daniels nodded respectfully. "Different evolutionary paths." "Yes," Morelkos agreed. "Our stable world made us complacent. Your harsh world made you strong." Dr. Martinez spoke up from beside Ixil. "We can learn from each other. Your technology combined with our backup systems would make both our species safer." The next morning, as the teams prepared to board the rescue shuttles, Ambassador Zektal sought out Walsh for a private word. "Commander, there is a Zorian tradition when one's life has been saved," the ambassador said. "The one who is saved offers a gift of great personal significance to the savior." He held out a small metal cylinder. "This has been mine since childhood. It contains memories of my home. I would be honored if you would accept it." Walsh received the gift carefully. "Thank you, Ambassador. But your people helped us too. Ixil's knowledge of local plants prevented several poisonings." "True cooperation," Zektal agreed. "Perhaps that is what we were meant to learn here." As the shuttles lifted off, Walsh looked down at the transformed landscape of PX 4872. The valley that had nearly killed them gleamed with crystalline structures catching the morning light. Beautiful, but deadly. Like so many worlds humans had encountered. In the shuttle, Lieutenant Commander Walsh sat across from Captain Morgan. "So," she said quietly, "was it worth it? All the preparations, all the extra weight we carry?" Walsh glanced at the Zorians seated nearby. Ambassador Zektal was examining a compass that Daniels had given him, learning how it worked with childlike fascination. Morelkos was writing notes in a waterproof journal, another gift from the humans. Ixel was explaining to Dr. Martinez how Zorian medical technology could be adapted to work without power in emergencies. "I'd say so," Walsh replied with a smile. "We didn't just survive, we built a bridge." Back on the UES Discovery, the formal farewell ceremony was very different from the welcome just 2 weeks earlier. Gone was the Zorian condescension. In its place was genuine respect. Before returning to their vessel, Ambassador Zektal made a formal request to Captain Morgan. The Zorian Alliance wished to establish a joint training program where humans would teach survival techniques to Zorian explorers. "We have much to learn from each other," the ambassador said. As Walsh escorted the Zorians to their shuttle, Science Director Morelkos paused at the airlock. "Commander Walsh," he said, "there is an old Zorian saying, 'True wisdom comes from surviving one's own foolishness.'" He gave the formal gesture of deep respect. "Thank you for helping us survive ours." Walsh returned the gesture. "That's what friends do." After the Zorians departed, Captain Morgan found Walsh in his quarters, inspecting his survival kit as he always did after a mission. "Adding anything new?" she asked. Walsh held up a small Zorian device. "Ixil gave me this. It's a manual water tester, no power needed, just basic chemistry. Might come in handy someday." Morgan smiled. "So you're willing to learn from them too?" "Good. Ideas are good ideas, Captain," Walsh replied, carefully placing the device in his kit. "And you never know what you'll need to survive tomorrow."